Okay, good morning or afternoon, lunchtime for some of you. Welcome to the AAAPC webinar on developing your online researcher profiles. We are so excited about this one, just excited about bringing it to you all. I'm sure that some of you who are on the call might already advocate for using different social media platforms and everything, but Flora, Sharon, and I will give you some tips and hopefully get you using different platforms and increasing your profile across the internet. So I get started with some introductions. Oh, just one more thing. We're also from the AAAPC membership subcommittee. Flora and I both co-chair that subcommittee, and we'll tell you a little bit more about joining AAAPC at the end of this webinar. So just for some brief introductions, I'm Shakira Milton. I'm a third-year PhD candidate at the University of Melbourne and a research fellow as well. And I'm in implementation science. I love the pipeline of research, but then also making sure that we're implementing it into clinical care. And I'm working currently in lung cancer and bowel cancer prevention, or lung cancer screening and bowel cancer prevention. And I might hand it over to Flora.
Hi everyone, I'm Flora here and I'm an optometrist as well as a research fellow at the University of Melbourne and the Centre for Eye Research Australia. So as an optometrist, I'm interested in all things eyes, involved in looking at new treatments and new ways to help us diagnose eye diseases earlier, but also improving access to eye care services around Australia. And also interested around how the eyes are affected in dementia as well, including Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's. And so I'm just going to pass to Sharon.
Kia ora koutou, ko Sharon Leitch tokonga, ko Otipoti ahau. Kia mā koutou, kia mā koutou, kia mā koutou katoa. I'm Sharon Leitch, I'm a GP and I'm a senior lecturer at the Department of General Practice and Rural Health from the University of Otago in Dunedin, New Zealand. My main research interests are in safe medication use in primary care, and I'm also very interested in the use of routinely collected data for research purposes. So lovely to meet you all, and kia ora.
So just for the topics we'll cover today, we'll talk about why bother with all of this media anyway, the social media and your online profiles. Flora will talk about Googling yourself. We'll share some information about using your university profiles, some tips for using Twitter, and then a whole host of other profiles, which we'll briefly cover.
So this is quite a common question. Why should we bother? Because obviously things like this take time and take some effort from you. But there are some really good reasons why we should try to increase and develop our online researcher profile. And one of the reasons is around participation, being able to be generous in science, sharing what you know and what you're doing, and participate in academic discussion. A lot of academic discussion actually happens online these days, aside from conferences and things like that. Having that direct, immediate communication and allows you to reach peers that you probably wouldn't normally be able to reach, or you may not be able to meet at conferences or in your day-to-day work. Another reason to do it is to advance your career. And that's because you're basically, by participating and having active participation, you're increasing your own visibility and you're allowing yourself to be searchable online as well. And this is really important because not only do academic collaborators try to find you, but people such as industry try to find you. And what people try to do typically is they'll Google you and they'll search for you. And depending what pops up and how easy you are to find, they are able to find out about you, what you do, what your work has been in the past, and to see whether it fits in with their projects and where they want to go. So being contactable, being searchable can be really important for you to develop, developing future collaborations as well. Another reason is to reach a new audience. The thing about being academics is that we're very good at talking to other academics, whether it be those within your department, your organization, or when you go to conference, people in your field. And it's not often that we really interact with people that don't work within our own niche area. Whereas when you're online, it allows you to reach people that you don't normally reach professions that actually might be important and would be good for them to know about your work, but they simply wouldn't have heard of you and your work specifically via their normal means. Perhaps they're not organizations who read papers, for example, but your work actually directly impacts how they should work. So you being able to communicate what you do to a bigger audience is really important, ensures that reach of your work, because at the end of the day, we want to do research that actually people want to hear, and we want people to hear about it. We want people to know what we're doing, and papers is one thing, going to conferences is another thing, but having an online profile and disseminating your work that way is another great avenue. And so that goes into my last point, is like, why do you want to do research if you don't want to share it to the world? Publishing is a really important aspect to our work, but at the end of the day, we want people in the public, want people who work in public service, for example. We want to be able to influence things like policy, etc. And to do that, people have to hear about what we're doing in order to gauge their interest and see the relevance to their own work as well. So this actually goes to a little quick exercise that I want everybody to do if possible. We can do it on your phones, we can do it on your computers. But my question is, have you ever actually Googled yourself? And I have to admit that I hadn't really done this before in the past until this exercise was proposed to me. And so it'd be really good if everybody could just jump onto their phone or whatever to quickly Google yourself and see what pops up when you do that. My question to you is, what are your top 3 hits? What are the top 3 things that appear when your name is searched for? And what does that say about you as a person, as a researcher? And what kind of content is in there? And is it something that you created yourself, or something that your institution or your workplace created for you? And how old are those profiles, or how old is that content that's in there? And so my question is whether anybody is willing to pop their hand up to say what they find when they Google themselves. Anybody willing to share? Well, Shakira's got one. So Shakira's, her top profiles are her Twitter profile, her Google Scholar, and her LinkedIn. No one wants to share. Sharon, what's yours when you Google yourself?
I was just getting around to typing it. So the first one's my university profile, second Twitter, third is LinkedIn, fourth is Google Scholar, and then fifth is Instagram, which I sort of run an artist account out of, so not my academic stuff, but the first 4, and then ResearchGate. Yeah, interesting.
That's really cool. So I had a feeling that not many people would want to put up their hand and tell me what they're doing. So, I've got one. Oh, the chat's been disabled. Katrina, can we enable the chat? Thank you, Emma. Thanks for telling us. Well, if we don't have the chat, happy for you to write it as a Q&A, and I'll read it out. But I'll just quickly go through mine. So this is what I see when I Google myself, and this made me cringe a little because there's a lot of photos of myself. But on the left here is when I Google me, I get a whole bunch of photos of me. But my top 3 hits are actually my 2 organization profiles, which is Centre for Eye Research Australia and the University of Melbourne, which are these 2, and then my LinkedIn profile. And so typically what happens a lot, and here we've got Hannah. She's like, Hannah, mine comes up with the actress Hannah Greenwood. But when I scroll down, you can see my university profile. My Twitter, LinkedIn, and Google Scholar are not visible. I have another one, which is my David, is my UQ profile, LinkedIn, IMDb. Oh, not mine, but a doppelganger as an actor, and I think he looks good. And down below is Orchid. Yeah, so that's great. It's great that the ones that are related to you are actually like typically what we find is our university profile or our organization profile. And then things like our LinkedIn or our Twitter are the typical next things that pop up. And so some of these things we have control over with regards to what's in the content. And some of these things may be harder for us to control. Like in the sense of like our Google Scholar will update automatically, which is great. But it doesn't really tell you about who you are as a researcher because we don't really have room to write anything. It just lists all of our papers, whether they've been cited, etc. So you can kind of give people an idea of like how well you're doing publications wise and what areas you're roughly working in, but it doesn't really say much about you. Whereas profiles such as your university profile and things like LinkedIn and your Twitter allows you to actually sell your own story a little bit more. So our university profile or organization profile, everybody tends to have one, and Sharon's going to go through that a little bit more. But this is actually a space where people don't update often, but at the same time is one of your top hits. And so it's really important that you actually do control this narrative of the story, because the most disappointing thing is when you Google someone because you're trying to find more about them and you go, there's a university profile, and you click on it and like the photo is from like 2 decades ago and the research is clearly old, and the blurb, either there's no blurb, there's no photo, or there's like nothing. And like, so at the end of the day, nobody learns anything about you. Whether you like it or not, you have an online presence. You don't have to have created a Twitter profile or a LinkedIn profile. Hopefully you do after today, but like you don't have to have these things, but things like your work profile is always going to be there, and people want to know who you are and know what you do. And this is where you can control the story because you're writing the blurb. And now we know that chat should be working for all of you now. And so to delve into a little bit more, I'm going to pass to Sharon, who's going to have a chat to you about the university and institution profiles.
Great, thank you, Flora. So I would say the university or your institutional profile is really your best bang for your buck. As those of you who have done the exercise have seen, usually the university profile is ranked quite highly in the Google search, and certainly this is seen by your academic colleagues and hopefully your collaborators, as well as for employers, as being a really reputable access point for information, because although you're often responsible for putting the content out there, it is curated by someone in your university. Like, I'm sure you won't be able to write any old thing there. It's got to be in a particular tone and a particular style. So I would really strongly encourage you, if you are not that interested in having much of an online presence, if you're going to do one thing, I think your university or institutional profile is the area that you should focus on. As I say, it's a wonderful opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about what your job is, what areas you're interested in. And look, people pay for this sort of online platform who are not associated with universities and institutions. People spend a lot of money on this. This is a free resource for you to be using, assuming that most people here are linked in with some kind of institution. So this is my university profile here. You probably won't be able to read it too much, but they're all pretty much the same. So this comes in, this is accessible through my university and through my department. It's got a not too out of date picture there. There's some contact information. So anyone who Googles me can really easily get to me and make a personal contact. I've updated that little research blurb, and I make a point of doing that about every year or so, because, you know, things changed. You know, you might be having more of a focus here or here. Up until last year, I was talking about my PhD research. Well, that's finished now. So, you know, I want to keep it fresh. And then our research office updates the publications, which I think is a really nice thing that they do. But in the past they didn't. So I was previously having to update that regularly. So use simple language, update it annually, have a nice portrait. And my university, and probably yours too, will have someone that you can just ring up and say, I want my photo updated, and they'll come out with a big fancy camera. So there's no excuses really for not having this up to date. I think that's all I will say about that, but I will pass on now.
So using Twitter for research is probably one of the most used platforms, especially when it comes to social media. And I love Twitter. I use it daily. And I just will cover a few of the benefits. And we'll talk about some things that you shouldn't do as well. But some of the benefits of using Twitter is to increase your impact. Funnily enough, your journal articles track tweets. So if somebody tweets the link to your article, that comes up as, you know, one of your impact factors, or it impacts your research. So I think increasing your impact is huge, and using Twitter is an easy way to do it. You can also stay up to date with your field of research. As an implementation scientist myself, I'll follow different organizations that tweet about implementation science. I also follow the top 2 implementation science journals, and they tweet stuff all the time. And if it interests me, then I can click on it and read it. And I also follow the right people. So people in my specific lab, but then people at the university and people globally who are maybe related to the work I do. And I think it's really cool as well, because the people who you follow show a little bit about their personality, and that's really nice. And you're not only staying up to date with your field of research, but you're kind of getting to know people in a more passive way. And opportunities galore. This little image on the side here is a tweet from AAAPC about a PhD scholarship that actually Hannah Greenwood tweeted a little bit ago in January. And these sort of opportunities are always up there. There are opportunities to join different committees and help out with conferences, just anything you can think of that might be an opportunity in research is usually shared on Twitter. And connecting with others. So you never know where the connections you have on Twitter could lead. You can always private message someone if you're interested in their work and you maybe have another question. And I just find that it's a really good way to connect with people at conferences as well. We're meeting people all the time when we go to conferences, and we come across so many people who we may be interested in, but we may not have something to share with them right then, or an opportunity that we may have right away. But I find that after I go to a conference or during a conference, I get a lot more followers, and I also follow a lot more people and connect with them as well. And I'll share a little tiny story about that in the next slide. But a few more tweaks or tips for using Twitter as well. I would say tweet regularly. If you tweet a few times a week, that's pretty good. I try to tweet at least once a day during work hours. Most people who we're following are probably here in Australia, and they're probably using Twitter around the same time as we are during the day. I don't really use it after work, and I probably only use it for about 15 to 20 minutes a day. But I would say tweeting regularly is a really good idea. And then interacting with people as well. If you just get on there and you scroll, then people don't know that you're actually on there. Or if you just get on and tweet, but you don't interact with your followers or people who you follow, then it's kind of like you're just there for you only. So I would say retweet other people's work, their tweets, and then quote tweet as well. and comment and like. So quote tweeting is where you can retweet, but then you can add your 2 cents to that tweet, and then all of the likes and everything get attributed to your profile. And I like doing that as well. And on the last slide, I just said use cool images. And in this tweet from my personal account, I was actually recruiting participants for some focus groups that I put on last week in Broken Hill in New South Wales, in far west New South Wales. And a few people did sign up. I just put the red cap link there. And I also used Canva to create that little image below. And Canva is amazing for anything. We're using Canva for this presentation right now, but you can create images, and that's how we create all of our images for AAAPC on our Twitter page as well. And it's just a good idea for increasing the number of people who see your tweets. And you can see on that one tweet that almost 3,000 people saw it. And I did recruit a few participants that way as well. Yes, you can use Canva for free. That's right. And so just a few benefits. Oh, sorry, I was going backwards, I think.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
That's all right. So a few more tips. There's so many things that come, so many good things, at least for me, that come out of using Twitter. And I hope that you guys find this to be the same for you as well. But you can share your latest work, but also share other people's work. So if you read a cool article, there will be people who are interested in that article. And if you share it on your Twitter, it's just always great. I said follow relevant people and organizations. I think one of the things that puts people off using Twitter is feeling like it's going to be just another social media platform that's going to be annoying. But yeah, it will be if you follow influencers versus, people who are in your field and things that you actually want to know as a researcher. So also show a bit of personality, be human. So that tweet as well is from when I went to the ACTA conference, which is the Australian Clinical Trials Alliance conference. And I tweeted a photo of me next to my poster, not particularly for people to read the poster, but for people to know that that poster is, my poster, I guess, and then for them to come over and chat to me about it. And to be honest, like about 6 people came over and said, I saw that tweet that you put up, and that's why I'm chatting to you now. And so showing yourself and being open and being, sharing things is very beneficial. And from this tweet, I actually collaborated with someone at the University of Sydney. And that was just amazing. I mean, it's just from a tweet, right? And I would say use hashtags and mentions. So if you're tweeting about someone or somebody's publication, if they have a Twitter, try and find it and mention them in that tweet so that they can see that their paper is being shared and interact with it. And then also they might follow you. You guys might collaborate. You never know what could come out of it. But yeah, I've already said live tweet at conferences, share opportunities, share your thoughts about research, industry, and academia. I like this one as well, sharing your thoughts about your field, because we all know that there's a lot that needs to change in our field, and we can kind of, chat about it at work and whatnot. But if you think that we should increase diversity and inclusion, or if you have other thoughts about how academics are paid or whatever, all of that can actually be impactful. And the NHMRC, I think it is, a lot of people were tweeting about females in research and how much funding they get and how the applications go more to males. And the NHMRC changed their guidelines and made it so that 50% of women had to get funding. And I just thought, 50% of the funding that they offered was given to women. And I just thought, wow, I saw this conversation happening on Twitter, but then it actually changed policy. So it's possible that by you being active as sharing just your general thoughts can be very impactful for the whole community of research. And I would just say as well to ask permission to tweet when you're attending webinars and stuff. You're welcome to tweet during this webinar. We'd be more than happy for you to. But some webinars I've been to, they're sharing research and stuff that hasn't been published yet, or very sensitive information. And I remember actually someone messaging me and they were like, hey, you shared my tweet. Can you please delete that? And then that made me realize that I should ask permission, especially when it's, maybe information being shared that they don't want to be shared with the general public.
Now to move on to some Twitter don'ts. So we all had all the Twitter do's from Shakira. So here are some of the things that we probably don't recommend. And one of them is scrolling endlessly. Twitter can be one of those things where you can spend forever on if you really wanted to. So remember to like, and what I do is like for work Twitter, I do set myself, I go, okay, you know what, I've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever. I set some time that I go, I can spend on Twitter, catch up on what's happening with my followers. And I try to keep my follower pool to be quite academic so that it's not just like, I don't get bombarded by all this other stuff that's happening. And a good way to go through that is when you open Twitter nowadays, there's like 2 essential Twitter feeds that you can get. And one is from people that you just follow. And one of them is like where Twitter starts recommending you stuff. And that's where you can start getting sidetracked and spend a lot of time just ending up on other stuff. So I try to stick to the following feed. So as I know, these are the people that I want to hear from. And it means that there's only going to be like a finite amount of tweets to kind of look through. It's really important to don't follow people that don't inspire you, and so that's fine. You'll be constantly kind of going through like who you want to follow, who you don't want to follow. And if you feel like that person's content's not not for you, then it's fine, unfollow. There's no point having that in your feed. Don't overthink it. Just use it. Just if you don't have a Twitter profile already, or you have one and it's stagnant, just go in, follow some people that you think you find going to be interesting, and then from there you'll actually start to find other followers that you'll be interested in. From when they tag them in their own little conversations, and you'll start to find different organizations or different people who are working on topics that actually interest you as a researcher and as an academic, and then you can follow them. Don't spend too much time making images. And that's why Canva is actually really cool, because not only is it's free to use, there is a paid version as well, but you can use it for free and have access to a lot already. But it's really simple. It's really easy to use. So it actually doesn't take a lot of time for you to make an image. And, an image can say 1,000 words. It's like it's really true. Having the image there captures people, captures their attention, and you can use it to even like explain the latest paper that you're about to publish. Like a little infographic can be really handy. And even like having images that you have from like your figures in your papers or whatever are actually a really good way of grabbing people's attention. So try not to overthink that, and just like have simple images, use the software that's available to help you. Definitely don't steal tweets without recognition. If you see something out there, remember to attribute it correctly to who created that content originally. We want to make sure that Twitter stays in a nice environment, especially around academia. And generally, people are very good about this. So tagging like who this content belongs to or where they found it. Another thing is like, whilst you should use hashtags and mentions in the tweet, that can help you gather attention. Try not to use too many in a single tweet itself. And that's because sometimes it can become quite distracting to read as well for the reader. I try to have them, for me, sometimes I have them at the tweet at the bottom because I want people to be able to search a hashtag and find my tweet, or I want to tag, I want to mention some people so that they can see this tweet. One way is that if you have an image and you want to tag someone, you can tag the image, you can tag people in Twitter, and that means that they'll get a notification that, for example, Shakira tagged me in a tweet, and I'll be alerted to that. So that's one way of tagging people, and because it's actually hidden under the image, it doesn't actually appear in the tweet itself. But at the same time, if you want an organization, for example, that you're tweeting to be visible, then you do want to put that in your tweet. And the last thing is no profanity. So especially especially if you're using it for work, and you're going to be tweeting about your work and to other academics or other people that you're interested in collaborating with or interested in reaching, try not to use profanity, because it can be a turnoff for people, and it can show that you want to keep a professional look to your Twitter if you're going to use it for just pure academic purposes. So now I'm going to pass to Sharon about Twitter types.
Thanks, Flora. So what Flora has been discussing up until this point has been mainly focusing on your personal Twitter page. And there is a little bit of a difference. So you've probably seen some group or departmental Twitter pages. And so I just want to outline the difference between the two. So on the left-hand side of the screen is my personal Twitter homepage. And on the right is the departmental Twitter page that I manage as the social media manager. So for the Department of General Practice and Rural Health here in Dunedin. So the differences between the two, I sort of see my personal Twitter as an opportunity to engage with others as an individual, as myself. It's really mostly about kind of promoting myself, connecting with other like-minded individuals, also following researchers that are working in the same field as me, or following journals or research groups that I think are highly relevant. I follow Twitter AAAPC, Twitter as well, and other groups like that. I do use it as an opportunity to promote my own research. And I guess the things I've said so far are pretty similar between your lab or your group Twitter and your personal account. You're promoting yourself or you're promoting your team and team members. The difference here is that with your lab or group Twitter, you're not advertising the research that's done by the whole group. You're promoting all of the team members and the group as a whole. There might be more advertising, so you're advertising job opportunities or retweeting. You can see on the right hand side, you can see I've retweeted this webinar sign up as well. So lots of kind of churn, I guess. The differences are with your personal profile, you've got far more freedom with your non-research content. So you might include more personal views, depending on how comfortable you are with that. I try and keep my Twitter profile purely for research, but some of that personal stuff does come into it. So I try and save that for other social media platforms. However, with the university, like we've got very strict guidelines as to what sort of tone we should set, and I'm sure your institution will be the same. They need to be reflecting, posts need to reflect the views of the university, and I doubt that that includes political views very often at all. And if it does, that's fine, but I would be strongly guided by your organizational guidelines. So your own Twitter, you can tweet obviously whenever you want. It's highly likely just to be on your phone or whatever platform you like. Whereas the university or group is more likely to be coordinated. It may not be one individual, but a group of people working together to schedule tweets in advance. So there are some quite advanced functions available with Twitter that you may or may not be interested in it, but certainly if you're doing a group sort of thing, it is worth looking into those. So there's, you can do it off your desktop. You can use something called Hootsuite, and there are actually a whole range of different Twitter tools so that you could schedule a whole lot of tweets to come out sequential, on sequential days rather than have to go in there all the time. And I find that quite useful. If I'm doing an update on like my department's publications, like I don't really want to dump it all in one load because, New Zealand time is not super popular with all the rest of the world. So you might want to stagger it out with different times. Yeah, and again, I guess the final point is you just, with your own profile, you can set an individual tone and style. With your group one, it should be very, professional, having a consistent tone. There may be a group or departmental policy or strategy. So just be very conscious of that and be careful about what you're doing. No late night drunken tweets. I hate my boss. No one wants to see that there, and you'll probably be quite badly censored for it if you're using the departmental page to promote your own personal views. So I think hopefully that's reasonably obvious and intuitive. Yeah, but please just put any questions you might have about running a departmental or group page there, because I've been doing this one for a while. I have quite a lot of older colleagues who feel freaked out by this. They were insistent we have a Facebook page, but I refused. So we're going with Twitter for now. Yeah, so I think the next page is talking about other profiles. Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to say that there are some other great profile options available. So if you've got a little bit more energy, as I said before, your university profile should be your #1 spot. These other options are all free to use and can just help raise your profile. And we're not raising our academic profiles to become famous or super popular, but if you want to do that, go for it. But this is really to connect with other like-minded people. And as Shakira was saying, especially through, you meet someone at a conference, you want to know more. This is a really good way to do it. So out of all of these listed, I would highly recommend Google Scholar. It's free and super easy to set up an individual profile. And then once you do that, you can look in and it tracks your stats, and it's a very simple way to do that. So at the bottom of the page here, that's my personal Google Scholar profile, just the top of the page there. So that's a very interesting format to look at, and a very easy way to see which works is citing yours. Yes, and as Flora says, that's if you see someone on a conference list, it's quite useful to go in and see what work they're actually doing. It's the most up-to-date of all the referencing platforms, I think. The next one down is Orchid ID, and you've probably had to get this already, and if you haven't, then you probably will in your imminent future. A lot of the journals that you submit your papers to require that you have an Orchid ID. And again, that's another way of collating your online research. It tends to be a bit slower, like I have to go in there and check that the publications are up to date. And between Google Scholar and Orchid, sometimes there's someone else with my name that's doing research in a different area, so I have to weed out all the gene expression therapies that they're doing and just make sure all of my ones are there. But that's pretty easy to do as well. Publons is when you have reviewed an article. Quite often they'll say, oh, do you want recognition for that? I always say yes. And then that gets uploaded and curated to Publons, which is stored under the Web of Science. It might not seem like a very useful thing to do, but I was recently approached to do an assistant editorial position, and they wanted to know what my username for that platform was. So they were interested, how much reviewing had I done. It's, I guess, a sign of public service, because often it's something that we do for free. I mean, I've never been paid for anything like that. So yeah, so it shows how engaged you are, and potentially if you're looking for an academic career, that's going to be something that you want to have on your CV. ResearchGate is a bit more of an informal online platform. I do maintain it, and it can be a useful way to be linked in, but I would put it as a lower priority. Occasionally people send me messages on that, and they're usually from countries or organisations that can't access my research. So sometimes I'll send them PDFs independently. Yeah, but beyond that, it's certainly not in the top 3 that I'd focus on. LinkedIn is the final profile that I want to talk about. So I sort of see it as like a professional version of Facebook. I have a profile there. I barely ever use it, but I think if you're in industry, that is something that you would very much focus on. So when I went to a conference late last year, and everyone was saying, oh, just look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me that way. So that was a health technology conference. So pretty much all of the people with stands and a lot of the presenters were from industry rather than from an academic perspective. So that was a very good way to connect with the people that I needed to do my research. So yeah, so there's a lot of different profiles out there. Think about what is important to you, what sort of people you want to connect with. And I think that will help guide you as to which profiles and platforms you should bother investing your time in. Some are super easy and require very little effort. If I was only going to focus on one thing, I would just do my university platform, and I probably would do Google Scholar as well. And the rest, you know, you can leave it. But once they're set up, you know, honestly, I do very little in terms of updating these things from year to year. Just check on it every once in a while. So hopefully that's all very clear. I'm very happy to answer any further questions you might have about those other profiles as well. Great. Flora, you're just on mute there.
Sorry, just always mute myself in between and forget that I'm still on mute. So I'm just going to touch upon other ways to build your online profile. So we've talked about a lot of the professional networks that we have. We've talked about Twitter. And so I'm going to go via a slightly different stream, which is to go around media and public media. And this is for people who are also interested in science communication, not just talking to academics, meeting academics, but then also trying to digest your research and create something for the public consumption as well. So one of the things that you should do is to get to know your institution's media team. And more often than not, there is one, because your organization or your university, they're interested in media. They want people to know about your work as well. And they don't know to publicize your work if they don't know you or your work. So getting to know them can be really handy, just having that contact there so they know who you are. But also they can also deliver media training as well. So if any opportunities arise, whether it's radio, TV, newspaper, whatever, you can go to them and ask them, you know, what do I do now? As academics, we're not necessarily taught how to speak to the public. We're taught to how to speak to other scientists, other academics, other colleagues. But to the general public, it's like, figure it out when you get there. And so the media team can be really important and can be a really good asset and place to get some guidance if these opportunities arise, because often, you know, something will happen, like, you know, there's a news story and they're looking for a professional opinion. And then if they find you, they're going to contact you and be like, okay, give me your professional opinion. And you'd be like, okay, what do I have to do? Okay, now you're going to go on radio tonight. And a lot of the time it's some really tight time frames. It's not as if you be like, oh, we want you on radio next week. It'll be like, we want you on radio tonight. And you have to either be prepared for that, or you just got to go in and wing it and hopefully learn from that experience as well. But at the same time, a lot of the time people will contact your media team and ask them for a professional. So if you are interested in this kind of stuff, this is where it's important for the media team to know who you are too, because they'll be like, oh, you know, they want someone who knows about eyes and can do this stuff. And like that is, and then they'll be like, oh no, I know Flora, and they can contact me and go, Flora, can you do this? So I've just had a note from Phyllis. Overseas media will look at university media releases and republish them so you get a broader audience. Yes, exactly. So if you do have a piece of work that you think that you want to publicize, talk to your media team and see if it's something that they're interested in publicizing for you. Because as Phyllis just mentioned in the comments, other overseas teams will take that press release. If you have a big paper that's coming out or something that's a really important, has an important message in there that the organization that you work for will probably want to stand behind as well, and they'll release a press release and people will just basically republish that because they don't want to have to write their own thing again. So they'll republish that, and because it has the credibility of your organization attached to it, it's a really good way to kind of publicize your work. A more personal thing, if you want to develop around your media profile and your science communication skills, is doing things like having a personal website, because often that can be something that, especially if you have a name where it's easily confused with other people, some people might actually have their own personal website because of that, so that you can be one of the top hits on Google. And that way you can control your content as well. But that obviously takes more effort because you have to maintain that yourself. Or some people write and maintain a blog, or they write opinion pieces. For example, many academics write for the conversation, for example, and you can pitch ideas to the conversation. You just have to log in and register as a member, and then pitch ideas to them. And if they're interested, they'll ask you to write something. So that can be a good way to help you learn how to write things for the public as well, especially if you have something that you want to communicate and you're the expert for it, and especially if anything comes out in the news and you want to provide your professional opinion, the conversation is a good way to go. And there are so many academics who sign up to the mailing list of the conversation. It has a huge reach. If you're interested in things like providing expert commentary for the media, one way to get yourself known to journalists is to register on SciMax. So SciMax is actually created by the Australian Centre for Media, Australian Media Centre, Science Media Centre. ASMC, and they maintain the SciMax. It's a list of people where you self-register yourself as an expert. You write down what topics that you can provide expert opinion or commentary on, and that's because journalists will look at that and they'll try to find people through that search function, try and find experts in the area that could potentially comment on their piece. If you're a woman, then do register on STEM Women as well. That's a great way to put a little profile on there, and you can tag what you're interested in. That goes beyond science communication. That includes things like you're interested in participating to be on the board for something, to provide an expert opinion. That's a good way to, and STEM Women is there to try and basically increase the profile of women in research and women in academia, so that we try to, as the UN goals are, bring everyone forward. And then when it comes to other personal science communication that you want for the public, you can use things like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok even, if you want to reach a younger audience, for example. And that's how some researchers and academics have used their platforms to not only talk about their own research, but then also about general science knowledge as well, to try and increase interest in STEM, interest in healthcare, and so people can understand why we do what we do. And for people who want to reach the younger audience and influence the younger audience to think about careers in STEM, think about careers in healthcare, they create little short clips around Instagram and TikTok, and have become really popular for amongst people who typically use Instagram, TikTok. So that is a little bit different to what we do as researchers, but it's for people who are actually really quite interested in that area, but don't know where to start. And a lot of the time people just film themselves talking about something, and then to a general audience, and go and build an audience from there. And so with those, though, I would just say that if you are interested in science communication to the public, and developing your online profile that way, consider who it is you want to reach, like who your target audience is, and what do you want them to think or feel from you, from your content. And that will help you work out which avenue it is to tap into, which one you should devote time in. Shakira?
Yes, so this slide is just to spruik AAAPC. I've been a part of AAAPC for a few years now, currently as co-chair of the Membership Engagement Subcommittee. So we do everything that has to do with new members joining, people who are currently a part of AAAPC, and bringing the best to them. So all of the benefits of AAAPC are just amazing, and I would just recommend that you join. But also we have subcommittees, other subcommittees. So we have the ECR and capacity development one, and they meet about every 6 weeks. All of the subcommittees meet around every 6 weeks, but the ECR subcommittee is really great, and they have a FACES group, which is open to everyone, and you can just join and meet people in your area. AAAPC also has the conference subcommittee and then the education. So if you're in education, I would recommend joining the education subcommittee. Any type of academic education for general practice or primary care, I would recommend joining them. And then we also have coming up,
we also have the Membership Engagement Committee.
yes, our committee. Yeah, we are looking for 2 more people. There are 7 of us currently, and we want to have around 10 people per subcommittee. So if you're interested in joining us, just reach out. You can send us a message on Twitter or email, however you want. But we're happy to have you as well. And we do all of the tweeting for AAAPC as well.
Yeah, you'll be developing some of these skills that we're talking about around Twitter, around Canva, around all that kind of stuff. So, and tweeting for an organization.
And then later on this year, on August 17th and 18th, we're having our AAAPC annual research conference. And it's our first time coming back face to face after a few years, and we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be at the University of Melbourne at the Melbourne Connect building. And it's pretty centrally located. It's not too far from the city. And we'll have probably around 200 delegates, we're thinking, and we'd love to see you all there as well. It's a great way to not only meet you in person, but then to also build long-term sort of academic relationships as well. So we look forward to seeing you all then. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming today. Yeah.
And are there we've got a few minutes left, any particular questions from anyone about anything that we've covered today? Feel free to ask, but also feel free to email us, or forgot to put our Twitter handles here, but you can also tweet us. I'm just going to pop my Twitter handle here in case anybody wants to connect, anybody who has any questions. But otherwise, this is, thank you for, I hope you enjoyed this session. Shakira, do you want to include? Yeah, awesome. So that's our Twitter handles in case anyone wants to follow or ask us anything. And then I should probably put the AAAPC Twitter handle as well. But otherwise, we've got 6 minutes, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, if you don't have any questions, that's all right. We'll chat to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.